Alhamdulillah, salatu salam wa rasulullah, in the name of Allah, most beneficent, most merciful. All praise be to Allah, and may His blessings and peace and blessings be on His messengers. This is usually what we start with when we start like a talk, particularly a talk about religion. So the reason why we decided to make this half an hour just for the talk and 50 minutes for questions and answers is most of the time people, when it comes to misconceptions or when it comes to theological differences and so on, people would like to discuss more than to listen. So that's why we made more room for the questions and answers. So I'll talk briefly about the roots of misconceptions, or where do misconceptions come from. That doesn't really pertain to Islam alone. It pertains to any religion or any concept, to any group of people. It just pertains to misconceptions in general. So I think misconceptions come from misinformation, misinterpretation, misrepresentation, and misgivings. This is not, this is not the problem of non-Muslims alone. It's the problem of Muslims and non-Muslims because misinformation, misinterpretation, misrepresentation is ours because we represent the religion. We share the miss with everybody else, and we do the misrepresentation solely. So the issue of misinformation, and you may want to say you're quite dogmatic because the misconceptions, you're blaming all the misconceptions on misinformation, misinterpretation, misrepresentation, and misgivings. Is there anything wrong about the religion itself? I have to tell you that I have to be quite dogmatic, because if there is something wrong about the religion, I would have walked out. It's as simple as that. How would I worship a God that is sometimes right and sometimes wrong? It wouldn't make much sense to me. How would I believe in a religion that is half right, half wrong? It just wouldn't make that much sense. So in a sense, if I believe in a religion that is coming from God, in a sense, you have to excuse me for being a little bit dogmatic about the religion itself being error-free. Because if I don't believe so, I wouldn't stay in it. Because there is no excuse for God to be wrong at times. There is an excuse for me and you to be wrong at times and right at times because of our limited capacities, our limited knowledge, limited, everything. But would there be an excuse for God to be wrong? No, I don't think so. So that is where my dogmatism comes from, if you think I'm being somewhat dogmatic. The misinformation, sometimes it's deliberate, sometimes it's non-deliberate. Causes of misinformation, special interests, or causes of deliberate misinformation. When people propagate wrong information about a religion, a group of people, or a nation, that is usually because of certain causes, and special interests would be one of the causes. Threats would be another cause, when people feel sort of threatened. And I have to sort of be a little bit more frank with you, or more clear with you. Like in Europe, for instance, there is fear from the demographic after. And then they will further and further diminish. But still, he had them for his entire life. But without having the context, the rest of the story, you're not going to be able to judge the personality just based on the fact that he had that many slaves. So that is, I think, part of the context. Part of the context is when we talk about, Islam, for instance, and in the wars between the Muslims and the Romans, and sort of the Roman Empire collapsing at the hands of the Muslims. By the way, the Roman Empire did not collapse in the hands of the Muslims. Roman Empire collapsed a lot before that, a long time before that. 410 CE, the Roman Empire collapsed, and for various reasons that you must be aware of. But the eastern part of the Roman Empire, which is the Byzantine Empire, may have suffered some defeats at the hands of the Muslims. But who started the aggression? We believe, and we can affirm, that they started the aggression, not the Muslims. Why did the Prophet, peace be upon him, say, دعوا الترك ما تركوكم واتركوا الحبشة ما دعوا الحبشة ما ودعوكم واتركوا الترك ما تركوكم. Leave alone the Abyssinians as long as they leave you alone, and leave alone the Turks as long as they leave you alone. Like, don't fight against the Abyssinians or the Turks. And we explain this because, we explain this to mean people who have just regimes or, fair regimes, leave them alone. Abyssinians had a fair regime. In fact, the Muslims fled to the Abyssinians, during the beginning of the mission, and they were persecuted, so they fled to the Abyssinians. The Abyssinians are Christian. The Romans are Christian. It's not a matter of religion. It's a matter of difference in regime. And people who have no regime, leave them alone. The Turks, they were nomadic. They did not have a system. They did not have a hierarchy. They did not have a suffocating or suppressing hierarchy. So leave them alone. If someone is not happy or is suffering from tyranny or persecution in one place, they can just move. They're nomadic people. You don't need to do anything to them. But the Romans, this was like a hierarchy that was very sophisticated, complex, and suppressing. And also, I have to say this, although some may not like it, but quite oppressive. My ancestors from Egypt who chose to be Orthodox Christians suffered a great deal of persecution because they did not want to be Roman Catholic, and this is within Christianity. So the Colosseum had, battles between slaves and lions, and if you put a human being against a lion, the results are almost certain. So that is really the reason why this particular civilization collapsed. The geopolitical issue has to be understood. This is the map of Europe, but it looks different, right? It does look somewhat different. I mean, if you don't recognize that it looks different, then it's a problem. But it looks somewhat different. So the geopolitical map moved like Mercury during those times. The idea here is that nations did not have established states where you identify with your state. You're American, he's Mexican. The public used to be ruled by the ruling elite, and those ruling elites expand their territory when they're powerful, when they're on the upside of the curve, and then the territories shrink. So the idea of expansion of territory was not an idea that the public cared about so much during those times. The public cared about who's next. Are they going to be nicer to us or not? Are they going to take that much tax from us on, farmland and so